All right. Welcome to another Coturnix Corner Live. Glad to see everyone here. I hope you guys are all doing well. Uh, Today we're going to do another member spotlight. We'll be talking with Austin Tucker of AJ's Jumbo Quail out of New Braunfels, Texas. Welcome to the show, Austin.
Howdy, everyone. Pleasure being here.
Great. All right. Austin's put together a really nice presentation that we're going to show you here in a few minutes and talk about how he keeps his quail on a small scale urban homestead. As always, we will be taking your questions and reading comments. Um, don't forget to type the letter Q in front of your questions. Just helps us find them a little bit easier. But before we get started, I do have a couple quick announcements. Big shout out to our sponsors, Hatching Time and Southwest Game Birds. As always, you can get a 10% off of any purchase when you use the coupon code Coturnix Corner at southwestgamebirds.com. And again, Hatching Time has donated another $50 gift certificate, which will be given away tonight, and that can be used on their website at hatchingtime.com. And we are also going to be giving away another Coturnix Corner Live coffee cup. So stick around to the end of the show, guys, to see if you won that. And also, I want to thank our moderators, Lauren and Henriette, for being here tonight. Lauren or Henriette, one of you guys, if you could pick two winners, as long as they are stateside, I need one for the coffee cup, and I need one to get the $50 gift certificate. Also, we have a continuing series on Coturnix Quail Color Genetics, and that's hosted by Allie of Maine's Confetti Quail Farm. The episodes are streamed live over on Facebook and then reposted here to the Coturnix Corner YouTube channel. And what we do is we try to keep them in a playlist. That way you have access to all of her videos in one spot. Allie does an amazing job of explaining the different mutations. She uses visuals and basic terminology, so even the beginner, can follow along. So check it out; it's really interesting. I'm learning a lot every single day. I think that's about it for my announcements. Austin, if you're ready, go ahead and tell us a little bit about yourself, and just let me know when you want to bring the slideshow up.
All right. Hi, everybody. My name is Austin. I raise jumbo Coturnix quail, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about myself and how I've kind of turned it into a business. So, I'm 24 years old. I was going to school for wildlife biology. I grew up here in New Braunfels, which is Central Texas area. It's in between San Antonio and Austin, conveniently located about 30 minutes away from each of them in either direction. And I just, I love raising quail, and I love, being, working with wildlife, whether it's deer hunting or fishing or anything like that. I work a part-time job at HEB, which is one of the largest retail grocery stores in the world, and I've kind of networked out of there and turned it into a small business, and I'm extremely grateful to be a part of this opportunity to kind of explain myself and how you can get set up with something similar to this and how it is possible. And that's it. If you want to pull up the first slide, we can go over that. So these are kind of my I guess commandments that I've followed whenever it comes to my business development and everything like that. So management is very important. The difference between good management and poor management is the difference between a profit or a loss. It is far cheaper to prevent diseases than it is to treat them. Oftentimes, there are no proven treatments available, and even where treatments are available, there is no guarantee they will work. Good management is the answer to the problem. Always remember that quail are living beings that are 100% dependent on you, the producer, and that you alone make the business a success or a failure. So, whenever it comes to management, uh, it's very important to have your goals written down, and you know you sit down every day and kind of address them and work towards whatever the big picture is, because if you do a bunch of little things towards the big picture, it adds up way more than you think. And whenever you get there, I mean, you'll have accomplished everything that you've worked for so far, and then it's time to set a new goal. So if we can go to the next slide. So selecting breeding stock is very important. So if you start with undesirable breeders, you will end up with undesirable offspring. So be cautious when selecting breeders from breeder stock from your birds or from someone else's. And if you plan on buying birds or eggs, here are some of the following things that you should consider asking or looking for. So number one being buy from a reputable breeder. Check the breeders for confirmation in size, shape, and color according to the species. Check for off color, size, body, or leg deformities and other abnormalities whenever purchasing live birds. And then when purchasing eggs, insist on uniformity in size and shape of the eggs. A large egg produces a large chick, a small egg, a small chick, an extra large egg seldom hatches, and a mixture of sizes results in unfair competition and can give the birds a poor and slow start. So, if you plan on keeping birds from your own stock, this is my most advisable thing. Select those that show the best growth, stamina, and feathering. So another thing also to consider is saving more birds than needed for breeder selection. So don't automatically just toss all your extra males in your grow out pen or your bachelor pen and just kind of let them free there, because you may need them. And so uh, this will allow for if you save more birds than needed, it'll allow for continued culling of undesirable birds as they appear, and it'll still give you the number of breeders desired. So if you aim high and miss in the sky, or aim for the moon, whatever, and hit the stars, whatever, that's fine. That's great, because you're still aiming high, and that's good. Because if you aim low, you don't want to, hit a house or whatever, the case may be. Uh, but having a few extra roosters and hens is advisable, so you can quickly replace non-fertile males or non-productive hens also. So it's important to, you know, take egg logs daily. Um, do wellness checks on your birds, whether it be once or twice or three times a day. Um, it's very important to check for these things, because if the type of breeder is desired by the market, uh, you can't uh, you can't just have something that's you know working half the time if it's an unproductive hen or a non-breeder quality male. You got to get rid of those. So, uh, for instance, I don't select breeder roosters under 250 grams, and that's at 10 weeks, and breeder hens under 300 grams by 10 weeks also. So with big roosters, they tend to be lazier, so they do less breeding. And if you have a lighter rooster in your pen with a heavier one, the lighter one will be doing majority of the breeding. So you'll have like kind of just an imbalance of offspring coming from majority of the small one. But if you increase your ratios, like a 1 to 3 or a 1 to 4, with jumbos, it's honestly pretty advisable to run like a 1 to 3.5, 1 to 4. I mean, people can do a 1 to 5, but you really want to be checking for your fertility whenever you're getting into the higher numbers with bigger birds, because they are lazier. And if we could go to the next slide. So managing breeders. So right here, each producer has their own ideas on managing breeders, and these following suggestions may be helpful in your program. Overwinter breeders in pens of 20 or more, because this is more natural for quail and they keep warmer. If on wire and raised pens or exposed to the cold, uh, have drop curtains to keep the wind from circulating under the birds to avoid drafts. Use wire flooring for breeders to prevent exposure to internal parasites. Ground or wood flooring with litter will work, but requires much closer observation, cleanup, and general management. Blood tests for diseases before laying season. Um, pair breeders 4 to 6 weeks before their normal laying season. And sanitation is a must throughout your entire program. So I breed indoor, and indoor breeding allows the use of artificial light to induce pre-season and year-round egg production. If you prefer this program, a 16-hour day is recommended. All night lighting does little to increase egg production. However, some do find it helpful in preventing the birds from flying as much and injuring themselves. Generally, lights are used in the beginning of December to induce preseason egg production in January. And quick caution, never reduce the total amount of light during the laying period. Reducing light time will reduce egg production, and if year-round egg production is desired, using a 16+ hour day is the simplest procedure. Time clocks are inexpensive and can be used to turn the light on and off for you, which saves a lot of labor. Continuous egg production or preseason production uh, will result in production during the winter, which is usually off season for a lot of people. So that's a big market right there. For best egg production results, the breeders need to be penned in an area where the temperature can be controlled. Um, Keep the temperature during the winter 60. I'm trying to scroll down on my slide and it's just really killing me right now. But okay, 60 degrees Fahrenheit or above, and then during the summer below 85 degrees Fahrenheit. Observe the birds closely and keep records. Failure to mate should be detected early and the rooster replaced. Egg fertility is also a method of checking mating performance. If an individual hen continues laying soft-shelled eggs, replace the hen. If a number of hens lay soft-shelled eggs, top dress the feed with pullet-sized oyster shell. If you're breeding outdoor, it is best to place the open ends facing south for sun and warmth. Also enclose the area with wire fence for protection from dogs, skunks, weasels, cats, and other animals. Protect breeders from general disturbances caused by working around the pen, children, and curious visitors. Any disturbance may cause them to injure themselves. Injury leads to cannibalism, which will affect egg production as well as mating. So visit the birds several times daily to be sure feed and water are present. Lack of either and lack of either can and usually does lead to greater and costlier problems. Remember, a pen bird cannot hunt for food and water as nature teaches it to do. You must provide this. The bird, not by choice, is 100% dependent on you. So I'm lucky enough to breed indoors. You will see on slides to come that I do have an outdoor aviary where I put all of my, I guess, uh, cull birds or just any birds that are just undesirable, male or female, and I put them in a large outdoor aviary. And that'll be on this slide coming up. So if we could go to the next slide. So, egg care. So this is very important. You can ruin a perfectly good egg by improper care. Each egg loss is costly since it represents one less bird for sale. Observing the following tips will help you get better quality eggs. So, collect eggs twice daily and 3 times daily if they are exposed to high temperatures. Transfer eggs to a cool, humid storage area. Temperature of the storage area should be 55 degrees Fahrenheit and have relative humidity of 75%. Standard air conditioners as used in your home. So if you're setting eggs on the counter or whatever, for cooling the eggs, removes moisture from the air. So the air conditioners that are in your homes are designed to remove moisture from the air. So the idea is to add moisture to the air because the egg is mostly water. And if you take away this moisture, the egg just becomes worthless. Store eggs with the small pointed end down. If eggs are held more than 3 or 4 days before setting, turn them at least twice daily. So that can be as simple as just tilting your egg tray that you have them in. Holding eggs longer than 10 days in storage may affect hatchability. Therefore, plan your quail operation so egg storage will not be longer than 10 days. Um, and also, this is something very important to remember because I feel like it is so easy to forget. Um, if you store your eggs in a controlled environment, like Terry's design is a very good design, and that's what I use. And so, before placing the eggs, which have been stored at 55 degrees Fahrenheit into the incubator, allow them to warm to room temperature. Otherwise, the shock of going from 55 degrees to 100 degrees may reduce the hatchability. Um, Also, another worthy thing of mentioning is how to clean the eggs if they become poopy. I use egg rollouts for my breeders. So luckily, a lot of the times my eggs are very clean. Um, but a way to remove dirt and matter from eggs is by lightly sanding off the matter with a fine sandpaper. So use a fine sandpaper, or you could even use a shop towel, but don't get it wet. Um, and that is a good way of cleaning eggs if you're really wanting to put that extra egg in the incubator. So if we can go to the next slide. So egg incubation. So improper adjustment of the incubator and carelessness on your part at this stage of the game can ruin all plans. The following pointers may serve as reminders of correct incubation procedures. So determine the size and type of incubator to be used by plans for your future quail business. Game bird equipment suppliers can furnish you with capacities and the capabilities of various makes and models. So GQF is a good example. Um, they, well, I know during COVID they had a very large increase in orders and everything like that, and I want to say they at one point took their number off the website because of just the amount of calls and everything like that that they were getting. But you can email or maybe even call them today, and go over what you're wanting, and they will pair you with the best thing that you're looking for. That's what I did. GQF, I believe, is in Georgia, and I would call. I remember almost, I want to say, weekly whenever it came to really researching and making sure I wanted that product before pulling the trigger on a $1,000 incubator. Um, in the picture reference in the slide, That's what I use. It is a GQF Sportsman. It's digitally controlled. It's a hatcher and an incubator. So um, you can set a hatch box on the bottom and have eggs turning on egg turners at the same time. And the humidity really doesn't play a super big part here where I'm at, because it's pretty humid already, and dry hatches work pretty fine here. And that could be, that varies based on where you are. But we'll go to the next one. Thoroughly clean and disinfect the incubator and hatcher before each usage. So this is important because you could have contaminants in there, and one spoiled or rotten egg can cause a big headache whenever it comes to cleaning and getting them out of the brooder, or getting them out of the incubator and into the brooder. Could make that a lot more stressful, and birds are a lot more prone to injuries when they're younger. They could slip tendons, splayed legs, all of that. If you're, pulling them out of the incubator and messing with them, not under a heat light or something like that, they need to go on heat immediately because of that shock. I mean, it's winter right now and it gets pretty cold here, and you don't want to keep them out there in that chill, because that chill is what'll drop those quails' body temperatures down and can cause a lot of fatalities. So you also want to constantly check the incubator and hatcher during operation to be sure the temperature and humidity are correct. The incubator and hatcher should be in a room where no major variances in temperature or humidity occurs. And I can tell you from experience that it's no fun having an incubator practically flood almost because of the external temperatures outside of the incubator, and the internal temperatures inside the incubator will just create so much condensation and will pool up at the bottom of your hatch box. Luckily, the hatch box I used was the big heavy duty plastic one that comes with the incubator and hatcher, so it didn't seep into it or anything like that. But what had happened is the eggs all practically drowned. And so that's why it's very, very, very important to monitor and watch these, incubators and brooders for their temperatures and everything like that, because something could happen. A switch could flip and on your breaker, and your incubator, it doesn't have any power and it's been shut off for however long. If you hadn't checked it that morning and that afternoon, you wouldn't have a time frame of when it cut out. And also, it's worthy of mentioning, like last March, the snowstorm we had here, a lot of people were without power and everything like that. And if you were incubating eggs during that and you didn't have a generator or something quick that you could think of to fix the issue, you were gonna lose them. But if we could go to the next slide. So common causes of poor hatchability. So this this is I guess $1 million question of why my egg didn't hatch. Nobody really knows like the exact reason of why, you know your egg or anyone's egg didn't hatch. There's tons of variables. It's like a lottery ticket. You don't know which ones are going to hatch or which ones are going to be winners um, until you scratch it off, or until, day 22. Um, and so that's why it's very important to just kind of keep an open mind whenever it comes to um eggs that hadn't hatched. And so some of the points that are on the slide are continuous disturbance of breeders during mating season results in higher percentage of non-fertile eggs. So if you're constantly kind of um, working around your birds, or you know kind of just throwing them off a little bit, just being around them and stuff like that, if they're not super tame or anything like that, or comfortable around you, they're most likely not going to mate. And they're going to be on high alert on what this, being is doing in front of them, and wondering why there's no food. No, I'm joking. But keeping bloodline over 3 years may result in problems. So it's always good to, I replace breeders about every year. The commercial places around here, they replace every 6 months. So it's entirely up to you. Quail, the hens are born with tiny cells, and like all poultry, they're born with these tiny eggs that are going to be all of their eggs whenever that they're going to lay in their lifetime. That they're these tiny, tiny cells, and you might see them whenever you're processing birds. Those little tiny orange sacs. Those were eggs, and that's uh, kind of how quail operate. Is just they're very productive the first year, and then it just slowly goes down, and that's just natural. That's you know it's a lot of stress on a quail to lay eggs and everything like that. If you're supplementing light and everything like that, it's important to give them the night that they require to give them rest and everything like that. So using eggs from old breeders is also a common poor or also a cause of poor hatchability. um, Hens or roosters, crippled or deformed, results in non-fertile eggs. If you have a hen that is hurt or whatever the case may be, um, it's not going to be able to mate properly, and so you're wasting space, and you need to fix that, because if it's a injured bird, you need to take accountability as soon as you see it. So too many hens per rooster. Whenever you're getting into jumbo birds, uh, that's primarily my focus and my niche. Um, Having large roosters and a lot of hens can result in very, very poor hatch rates. Um, and that is solely just because of the laziness. And if you have a lot of hens, that's a lot of work for a big bird. So it's important to have a good ratio based off of whatever your setup may be, your breeding program, and taking it from there. Holding eggs in storage too long, we talked earlier, going past 10 days, it's definitely a risk. I mean, you can do it. It's not necessarily advisable, but I mean, you could do it. I've heard stories of people hatching grocery store eggs, and they had a few hatch. I mean, if you have the space, I guess, in your incubator and the access, I guess, to the eggs, I mean, why not? I guess. But improperly storing eggs before incubation, so having them on a counter for too long could dry them out, just removes the moisture from the egg, and you could run into a lot of partially developed chicks that may have not been able to get out of the shell. And most of the time, if you're dealing with that, it's number one, it's a lot of work and time to fix, that issue, to assisting hatches. I mean, I try and help whenever it's necessary and everything like that. but it doesn't always, you know, work out, but I guess it's the thought that counts. And you can do it, but improperly storing eggs before your incubation, it can really dramatically affect your hatchability. And failure to turn your eggs, that is a big one too, because it just really doesn't help the eggs stay fresh, or um, be able to, I guess, kind of acclimate to the rolling and constant turning and everything like that. I'm not too sure on how often my GQF turner uh, turns, but it turns pretty often. And if you're not keeping that egg active, it could just go dormant and just practically just become a dud. And so, not allowing stored eggs to reach room temperature before incubating, that's a big one. Mentioned earlier, because keeping your eggs in a good environment like a fridge that you fabricated to, be a egg storage container, vessel. Um, Whenever you take those out, you got to take into consideration that they've been in there for so however long, and they're pretty cold in that chill, and the 100-degree temperature inside the incubator could really cause an issue. Um, and so, a wide variation of temperature during incubation. So if you have something that if you have an incubator that isn't, if it's a DIY incubator, which I'm not hating on, I started out with a Terry's design incubator and graduated up to Sportsman. It did me well. I grew my business substantially with that. Um, and it's very important to just keep in mind that not everyone's DIY project is going to be the exact same, because so and so might not have the tools, or different cuts, different person, it's just a different situation. And so, um, if you have something that has cracks, or it isn't sealed or properly and everything like that, and it's reading 5 degrees lower on the bottom, and you know 10 higher up top, it's gonna have issues. So making sure and checking your incubator and having extra hygrometers and thermostats and everything like that is very important whenever it comes to having a good hatch rate. Improper humidity during incubation, and partially during lockdown or hatch out period, is a common cause in poor hatchability. um, it's very tempting to open your incubator during lockdown and look and see if you got a ton of chicks hatching, or if it's just a blowout, basically. You want to keep it closed, because if you open that incubator, you're going to let out all that moisture, and all that moisture can cause all your eggs to shrink wrap, or cause some of them partially to shrink wrap, and that leads to all kinds of different issues that you don't want to get into. And so, having a good humidity, like I mentioned earlier, mine all drowned because of the external temperatures and the internal temperatures of where my incubator was, is very important whenever it comes to hatching, because none of those eggs hatched. And if you're planning hatches for people, it's very important to meet expectations, and having a backup set of eggs or an incubator is also a good call. So, poor sanitation and failure to clean a hatcher is very, important whenever it comes to having good hatch rates, because if you just have a dirty environment, it's just going to cause just a big problem. I mean, you're dealing with eggs that are just fully enclosed in pores, and if you have germs or anything like that inside of your hatcher, or in your egg turner, or whatever, you could have a lot of duds whenever it comes to not having a good hatch rate. I've seen pictures of like flies, like if if you leave your eggs out, or whatever the case may be, a fly could lay eggs on them, and here you are, you're practically incubating fly eggs inside your incubator with all your other eggs, and it could just cause just a catastrophe whenever it comes down to being sanitized and having a good hatch rate and healthy birds. And washing eggs is also a very common cause of poor hatch rates. If you're wiping the bloom off of the eggs, it can it could just kill your egg, and that is a potential bird that is, could be yours, could be someone else's. But washing eggs, some people spray them with Listerine or a water solution. I don't recommend it. I think that the natural bloom is the way it should be intended and I guess used. So I mean, I just go without washing my eggs, and my eggs hatch just fine without washing them and spending all that extra time. If we could go to the next slide. So brooding. So brooding is very important. It is the most important phase of your quail program. Here are some of the basic guidelines. So having a clean brooding area, use moisture absorbing litter or blue shop towels work great. Don't use regular like hand towels that you use in your kitchen. Those have a very slick film on the surface of them, and you could end up with just a very high percentage of birds with splayed legs. I had someone who was running into splayed leg issues, and they reached out to me and they asked what could they do, and because they were having, their words, 25% of their birds with splayed legs, and that is just a huge number of birds with splayed legs. I don't have that many shot glasses in my house to put all those birds in, and so um, I asked what were you lining your hatch box with, and they were using just white like hand towels, white paper towels with the really slick, sleek surface. And I told them use blue shop towels. Uh, they have this like microfiber type of material to them where quail can grip them, and their legs grow the muscle and strength that they need to support themselves, and everything works out good with blue shop towels 99% of the time. And I told him to reach out to me whenever his next batch was going to hatch and to let me know how it was. And when a few weeks go by, he reached out to me and said, wow, major difference, didn't have any issues this time with splayed legs, thank you so much. And that's just one of those important things whenever it comes to brooding, is having a good material form, whether it's a moisture absorbing litter like pine shavings or wood shavings, builder sand, whatever. uh, it's important to have that because of the issues that can occur. uh, Brooding temperatures, very important. um, and providing enough space. So a clean brooding area, thoroughly clean the brooding area. So you can look at your manufacturer of whatever brooder you bought or whatever you built. You can go based off of what these larger companies recommend and use their sanitation or chemical mixtures, or find something online that works best for you. Maybe you could find something with household ingredients that is easily accessible and a lot more cost efficient. uh, but using disinfectant before cleanup is a waste of money because you cannot disinfect a dirty area. So don't don't just use all this chemical and everything like that before you kind of clean it up, because you'll just be spreading that around, and you can't clean a dirty area, or you can't disinfect a dirty area. Um, and so don't use litter that has been used for any previous birds, and don't use sawdust. During times of high humidity, it has been experienced that sawdust may produce mold and fungus health problems. Also, chick quail may eat the sawdust, which is not desirable. Wood shavings, builder sand, or pine needles are mostly commonly used in this state, providing at least 2 inches of depth of litter in the brooding area, keeping the litter dry. Wet litter promotes many undesirable problems such as internal parasites, external parasites, eye damage from ammonia, molds, etc. Um, Kinds of brooders available. Your plans now and your future will govern what type you use. So, um, originally, I mean, I had the whole DIY setup whenever I got started out in quail. I had built a 4x4 brooder that was made out of 1 inch by 2 inch pine strips. I think the pine strips were like 8 or 6 feet long. I got them from Lowe's. Uh, Built a frame out of that. Had caster wheels I got from Harbor Freight. Uh, had had that on a wire bottom, so I had a big. I basically made a frame that fit underneath the frame of the hardware cloth that they poop through, and I made just a like kind of like a massive poop tray out of just a frame of 1x2s, and a tarp that I just stapled to the 1x2, and just used I used a plastic dustpan to scrape it off in a tote, because if I use metal, it would mostly rip the plastic that was my poop tray, and I didn't want any tears or any leaks or anything like that going on in there. And uh, that's just one of the types of brooders available. Uh, I eventually graduated into what you see here is a GQF digital battery tier brooder. This is digitally controlled. I can set the temperature for each tier. There's 5 tiers. Um, it's costly, but you know what? It's sure did save me a lot of time over the last year. I've had it for about a year now. It has treated me so well. Having the extra space is very important. It's clean, it's organized, and it's just something that is something you need to consider whenever you're growing your quail business. Um, Take time to plan your future desires regarding quail before purchasing equipment. Poultry and game bird equipment supplies can give you information. Suppliers can give you information on various types of brooders. Be sure to purchase a type which can be easily as well as accurately adjusted. Brooding temperature. Uh, Brooders should be turned on and operating correctly at least 24 hours um, before before putting chicks in there. This not only gives you sufficient time to make necessary adjustments, repairs, or replacements, but it takes the chill off the brooding area. Be sure each brooder is operating according to manufacturer's directions. Check temperature at the outer edge of the brooder. Um, Always observe the chicks to see if they are comfortable. If they tend to pile up or crowd near the center of your heat source, more heat is needed. If they stay way out and do not go under the heating element, it's too hot. They should be spread out comfortably under the brooder in a circle from the center out. Um, Anytime quail are sick, heat should be provided regardless of weather. A sick quail will chill, but by providing heat, you will help the bird overcome the problem and usually lose fewer birds. Before the chick quail arrive, provide feed on a rough cardboard flat or paper towels. Do not place feed on a slick material because it may cause chicks to be spraddle-legged or splay-legged. Um, Place clean, fresh water in water jars the day before chicks arrive. The brooder heat will take the chill off the water to prevent shock. Cold water could shock birds just out of an incubator. and that could lead to a lot of issues. Place marbles or clean pebbles in water troughs to attract birds to water, as well as to prevent them getting into the troughs and drowning. Um, in the picture, uh, my water troughs are very, very narrow. Uh, I have never had a quail chick die or drown in my water trough, knock on wood. Uh, but you can place you can place marbles or clean rocks or something in there. Maybe a screen, like how people do for bees. Um, and they can drink safely and not fall asleep in there. Uh, Provide enough space, provide sufficient floor, feed, and water space. So take an account of your feed and water troughs, square footage usage. Um, Overcrowding and lack of feed and or water available can result in serious problems. You'll find out through experience what you should and should not do. For the first 1 to 10 days, you can do 6 birds a square foot and then adjust as needed down to 3.5 square foot in a grow out or breeding situations. You'll find that because of different conditions and different management on each farm, what works well for one quail producer may not necessarily work well for another. And if we could go to the next slide. So this is the last slide. We're going to be talking about the grow out. Management during grow out. Following these suggestions will aid in successful grow out. Do not crowd the birds. Provide several feed and water stations. Provide shelter and hiding places for protection from weather and from one another. Outdoor pens should have the openings facing south and fence in your grow out areas. So in the picture, you can see my grow out area. I kind of use it basically. I don't keep my breeders in the grow out. My grow out area, I used to have a hatching time grow out, but my brooder, my 5-tier brooder, is big enough to where um, I can usually hold 2 batches of birds, meaning I can hatch birds out and have another batch come in a few weeks later and take up. I could fit a lot of birds in that brooder. It's a very large brooder, and I haven't been doing necessarily just like 400 bird hatches or anything like that. I've just been growing with my business. Not kind of getting ahead of myself whenever it comes to having a ton of birds on hand at all times. I like to kind of cycle it every 2 weeks. Um, and that's why having a breeding program is very important, because you can set expectations of hatches for anybody who's interested in picking up live birds. Um, and I just put my undesired traits, basically, or any of my call birds out here in my large grow out, in this aviary. It just gives them a lot of space. It gets all the extra males out of my place. I take these out on a lease where I have access to put these birds outdoors. But it's it's great to have something like this, like a bachelor pen, because you don't have to necessarily be worried about, collecting eggs and everything like that. Uh, I do collect eggs from my grow out about every day. I just don't collect them as much as my breeders, because my breeders I collect about twice a day to 3 times a day to just get them out of the indoor temperature and get them into an egg storage unit. Um, and that just helps with having good hatch rates and everything like that, which is very important with having good management and having a successful business. But having this grow out it's really saved me a lot. Um, it's very nice to have the space. If you can have a grow out, I know not everybody can have a grow out. So like a grow out cage like this, meaning outdoor and just being able to put, hundreds of birds in there. Um, because this is more than 20 feet long right here and about 10-foot wide. Uh, so I can put a decent amount of birds in here on the ground in a deep litter system, especially if I'm spreading coastal grass or you can do pine shavings or whatever the case may be for you. I do coastal grass, and that really helps keep it clean and everything like that. Um, but um, it is suggested it's often suggested to grow meat purpose quail on wired floor pens, uh, mostly because of the parasites and everything that is involved potentially in a deep litter method or being on the ground or just being exposed, to, I guess, wild conditions, or artificially wild, I guess, it's almost like whenever you let cows overgraze. When cows overgraze on pasture, they start eating down to the base of the plant, and the base of the plant is where majority of parasites and bugs and everything are. So if you got sick cows, you should take that in consideration. And so if you're eating off the ground or if you're on the ground at a ground level like a quail, they're pretty low to the ground, you're more, exposed to those issues. But check on the birds often enough to be sure that feed and water are available. Check also for evidence of health problems. It's worthy of mentioning doing a walk around your pen to check for any signs of predators trying to get in. So you can see here, I've got a tarp. I mean, I just went to Harbor Freight and I bought a tarp and I cut it in strips basically, and I zip tied it to the chicken wire PVC frame aviary I have here. And instead of using metal, cats cats are probably my biggest issue. I mean, cats are the issue whenever it comes to my predatory problems. A lot of times. A lot of times they'll try to you want to zip tie it in like 8-inch sections because you'll get cats that are very creative, and if you give them enough time to figure something out, they honestly will kind of figure it out, and they'll squeeze in between the zip tie gaps, and they'll reach their arm in, and they could injure a bird, and injured birds leads to cannibalism and all the nasty stuff that you don't want. You just don't want predator problems. So it's really important to walk around, check, make sure that you're not having any breaches or anything like that, or fixing a problem before it happens is really what I'm getting at. um, uh, Placing your water and feed on top of a screen is often recommended as well to keep debris out of the feed and or water troughs. So you can see in the picture, it's kind of hard to see, but the I have two water troughs, or one is the, I guess, gravity fed one, and then behind that there's a pan on the rocks on the back corner. Um, the one on the rocks, it's clean, it's on the rocks, it's on a surface, and it's raised way. The walls of it are a lot higher than the one you will see that's blue right there. But that is on like kind of like a, it's like on like like a gardening tray basically, so it's got holes on it, and I flipped it upside down and I put a pot underneath it, so uh, it supports the weight of the water. And what that allows is oftentimes birds will relieve themselves while they're drinking or whatever, and it won't cause any buildup around your water, which is very important because all of that could get into your water source, and if it gets into your water source, it could promote a lot of bacteria and really bad health problems with your birds, and you'll have a lot of issues. Um, so it's really recommended to build a screen. I know commercial people will do like they'll do they'll build a frame basically out of like a 2x4, and then they wire one side of it, and then they invert it, and they have the wire facing up. So then they put the water on top of that, and that like a big screen, and it just works as preventing bacteria and everything like that from getting in your water. Uh, Having a clean water and feed source is very important for raising healthy birds because, I mean, you could run into an issue, maybe you didn't catch it. If you have, let's say, water troughs and it's a gravity fed system, and you could you just cleaned it and you didn't knock out all the air bubbles in the lines, and so your troughs never filled up, and you never looked at that because as soon as you connected it all, you walked away, and you know the birds were without water for however long. You could run into a stoppage of egg production. You could run into birds getting egg bound. You could run into uh, just birds dying. Um, it's just something that you want to avoid at all costs. And these tips and tricks that I've shared with you are just kind of my, uh, I guess, commandments, you could say, of my business model. And it's helped me tremendously, just these few things. And it's just I'm grateful to share this opportunity with everybody. And if you have any questions, feel free to ask. I'll be more than glad to answer them.
Okay, cool. As a matter of fact, we are going to jump into the questions right now. Um, I like what you said about the checking the water system. Hatching time cages are notorious for that. When you first fill that bucket up, you have to open up that drain at the bottom, pull the plug, and let it fill up, the pipe fill up full of water before it's locking it. Otherwise, you'll have an airlock in there, and it'll take forever to get out. So,
Oh yeah.
good point on that. All right, I am going to just, we don't have enough time to hit every comment, so I'm just going to jump down to the questions. Guys, remember to type the letter Q in front of your question, and we'll make sure we get to it. Quite a few people in here saying hello. I wish I had time to hit everybody up tonight, but we've got quite a few comments in there, so I want to make sure I can get all the questions.
For sure.
All right, Vam Smith says, any tips on how to successfully start your own quail business? Forms, permits, do's and don'ts, biggest lessons learned?
Okay, so whenever I started out, I really modeled my business around kind of my shire's policies because they're a great company, and that's where I got my original breeding stock from. And so whenever it comes to business forms and everything like that, you really want to look at your state and local laws because the federal law is often interpreted differently by state and local officials. So something might be different than somebody else's per se if they're in a different state or county. You just need to check with your local officials and everything like that. Like for instance here, you could check with Texas A&M's agricultural extension office and everything like that. The Department of State Health Services will also reach out, assist you in your future plans and everything like that, whether it be egg or meat sales or whatever it may be. Coturnix quail here in Texas don't require permits. They are a non-native and they cannot even become feral here. They will not survive if they get out. So there's no permits required to keep them. But bobwhites, for instance, there are licenses that are required to keep them because they're native birds, and you just need to check on your state and local laws.
Okay, great. Levi says, do you use Corid as a preventative?
No.
Okay. I've got some. I've never had to use it, but I do have some. Van wants to know if you plan on putting together your own cookbook.
I do. Honestly, I really do. I love to cook. No, I grew my grandpa was a big inspiration to me. I grew up watching. I was a big old lineman back in the day, back in high school, and I could eat, and so I grew up eating and everything like that, and watching Anthony Bourdain, Andrew Zimmern, Bizarre Foods, Man vs. Food with
Yep.
what's his name? I forget. But yes, I do plan on making my own cookbook, or at least just making cooking videos, because I
There you
love to
go.
cook and I'm pretty good at it. So.
Cool. Veronica wants to know, at what age do you cull your males?
So, okay, commercial places around here, they cull at 6 weeks because it is the most cost-effective thing to do. They don't necessarily grow drastically past the 6 week mark to make it justifiable to keep them. If you're culling them for cost-effective reasons, saving money, wherever the case may be. I cull my birds. It really depends. If I want to eat them, I mean, honestly, 12 weeks is really a good time to cull, because you'll oftentimes run into birds that are close to 16 ounces or a pound, and those look great on a plate. I tell you what, they are a jaw dropper when a guest or someone sees that. Oftentimes, people think they're Cornish hens.
All right, cool. Veronica says, do you have a trick to tell which hen is laying or which ones aren't?
Okay, I mean, honestly, pulling up the chair and just like sitting there and watching a lot of times. I mean, spending a few hours in there and just kind of listening to all the egg songs being played is really good. But you can separate them whenever it comes to trying to see what hen is laying. Or, I mean, oftentimes if you got birds that got problems, a good way to see or notice that is to, if you see feathers in your pen, that could be a sign of a bird that's in distress, whether it's other birds bullying it because it's showing sign of a weakness, because it's injured, or whatever the case may be. That's kind of what I go by.
Okay. Vams has another question. Says, do you have an opinion on selling balut eggs?
I mean, everyone has an opinion. I mean, I don't. I just haven't had the market. I mean, if somebody came up to me and they were like, "Hey, will you bullet some?" I don't know how to correctly say
Balut?
it, but
Yep.
yeah, bullet these eggs for me or whatever. Do you sell these? I mean, I can if they want me to, but it's not something that I actually chase. That I find. I feel like I have bigger fish to fry, but it is a good market if you get a market down. That's just the most important thing. I haven't had that come up to me or whatever, so
Right.
I haven't gone into it, but I mean, I would.
Okay. Verna, this is a follow up on that. It says, Verna wants to know, have you sold balut and have you tried a balut egg?
Well, so my first experience with a bullet egg is watching Bizarre Foods with Andrew Zimmern back whenever I was probably, I don't know, I was probably like 14, and watching him eat a duck egg like that. So
Yep.
I haven't I haven't ever tried one myself personally. I'm not opposed to it. I've never done it. I'm sure it's an acquired taste,
Yep.
but I'm open for it. I'll try it twice for the chef.
Yep. I had William Carl Foster and Klaus from Paradise Quail trying to get me to eat one on camera. I'm like, I don't think that's going to happen.
Yeah, maybe if Terry does it, I'll do it.
I don't think so. Okay, Van wants to know, he has celadon layers from a local breeder, but his eggs appear much smaller than your celadon egg pictures on Facebook. Do you know how I can increase their size?
So, I mean, oftentimes more mature birds will lay a larger egg a lot of the time. So if you
Hmm.
have an older bird, you're gonna get more consistently large eggs. But it also does, genetics do play a part in that. E- Tracking your eggs is very, important whenever it comes to having uniformity in the future, because if you're incubating just a wide variety of eggs, as mentioned earlier, you're going to have inconsistencies and unfair advantages for your chicks, and just future genetics are just going to be more inconsistent. If you weigh your eggs before incubating and have a more controlled area of weights, you will I mean, more than likely see a increase of weights whenever you're correcting your, breeding program.
Okay.
Just culling or just having a harder, stricter.
Sure. Animal 333 says, how common is it to have hens that don't lay eggs at all?
I mean, I haven't ran into that. Honestly, so with my indoor setup, I typically get birds that lay eggs at 5.5 to 6 weeks old. Is really whenever they begin laying. Now, my jumbos do lay larger eggs than my celadons. My celadons do lay a decent sized egg though, comparative to my jumbos. But just if you're talking on average, the jumbos are much larger, and they'll lay at 5.5 to 6 weeks old. I haven't had any issues of hens not laying, but that's something that you would want to eliminate from a strict breeding program, because it's just space in your program that could be taken up with something that is producing.
Yeah. Usually, if you have birds that aren't laying, if it's more than one, it's usually an issue. It could be lighting, it could be stress, it could one of a million things that are causing them not to lay. So I would look into your setup. Okay, Vams has got a lot of questions here tonight. Says, do you have a preferred number of eggs to hatch at once? Do you notice a higher mortality rate with a large hatch, pushing them against each other, bullying, etc., or do they appear happier in larger numbers?
That is a very good question. So, I mean, what I like to do is I candle my eggs before I put them into the hatch box, mostly to save space, because it's really important if you're doing large hatches, as mentioned, because if you have a bunch of duds in there and you don't know it, you could just you could run into chicks just trampling each other. You could run into issues with chicks just trying to get out of the eggs and hatch. There's a number of benefits of candling, and that's one of the reasons why I don't have a set number of eggs I like to hatch. I mean, I typically will fit probably about 2.5. I'll put, you could say 300 eggs in my incubator, and I'll candle those on day 15 and take the 250 or whatever and put them in the hatch box and I have no problems with trampling or anything like that.
Okay. Simon says, I bought some pharaohs and one hatched white. I was told that this is normal by the breeder. Is this true?
I haven't had that happen with any of my eggs, but I mean, no. It could be it's definitely a genetic issue, and it could be 1 in a million, like a blue lobster or something like that. But I mean, to answer your question, no. No, I haven't ran into anything like that. You will.
Yeah, watch the. Allie's got some genetics videos over on. Well, they're here on the channel too, but they're over on Facebook. You've got some white bloodlines in your quail. So. All right, let's see. Vam says, how long do you give late hatchers?
That's a good question. I mean, a lot of the times, if you're waiting around for late hatchers, you're gonna have to assist them. Or, I mean, I'll go as long as about 24 days. Honestly, I give them about 24 days. Yeah, it's a decent amount of time. But if there's a being in there, I'd like to get it out, or at least give it a chance before I chunk them into the recycling or compost recycling.
Right.
And so, yeah.
Yeah, I normally don't go past 18 days. I get the bulk of my chicks. I seem to have issues if they go too long. It's not a healthy chick anyhow. So.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly.
Okay, there's another one from Vams that says, question, not having a large space, could I keep my collecting eggs that I will incubate within 7 days in my incubator with only the egg turner on and keep an ice bottle water an iced water bottle in it. Average house temp is 65.
I mean, you can. I mean, there's, you definitely can. Now, there are ways to increase your hatchability uh, by, having it in a more temperature controlled environment that's not like a central air system, like a house that's drawing moisture out of the egg. Uh, I wouldn't, I wouldn't, I wouldn't like do anything crazy like wet towels or anything like that and put them in there. I mean, honestly, if you've been keeping them on the counter and it's been working out for you, I mean, all power to you. It could help to turn them to while they're waiting on the counter, but it would probably be best thing to do is to build something that you could store your eggs in, because that's just gonna save,
Sure.
it could save you a lot of money over a year.
Yep. Okay, Yusuf says, how much do you charge per dozen of eating eggs, and who is your target audience?
All right, that is a great question. Thank you for answering
was.
that. I love to get into the number side of things. I hope to, be on here in the future and really provide a lot of marketing answers and everything. But I sell my eggs for $3 a dozen, presuming people eat them. I don't care what they do with them. It's their business. But I do sell them for $3 an egg, or $3 a dozen. Now that doesn't include the carton and a label. If I have a carton and a label on there, it's $4.05 for a 1 dozen unit, which is the dozen of eggs, a carton, and a label. Now if I'm selling a 2 dozen egg unit, because I have cartons that are 2 dozen and 1 dozen quantities, eggs are $3 a dozen, so there's 2 dozen, so that's $6 in eggs, plus I do 75 cents for the $2 or 2 dozen carton size, and 40 cents for my labels. So a 2 dozen unit comes out to $7.15, and a 1 dozen unit is $4.05.
Okay, cool. We got a guy around here. He's got a pretty good farm. He raises mostly bob whites, for hunters and whatnot. But he does sell hatching eggs, or not hatching eggs, but eating eggs. And all he does, he puts 50 of them in a little Ziploc sandwich baggie, and he sells them $15 a pop. That way, he's got nothing to buy except for the sandwich bags, and
that's
got
perfect, honestly.
Yeah, he's got quite a few customers too.
That's really good.
All right, James says, is it possible to keep some layers laying while others are in molt?
I mean, well, each quail is different, so some could be in molt and some couldn't be in molt. Really, if you're feeding them all the same feed, and if they're all not laying, you should add some calcium, whether that be eggshell or oyster or whatever. If you're running into trying to, I mean, you can keep them. The answer is yes, you can keep them. But ways to improve, I mean, you really wouldn't want to, on a production level, if we're talking business, you wouldn't really want to keep that around, honestly.
All right, Vams has another one. Says, what made you decide to invest in quail as a business? How do you juggle efficiency, your company, and other hobbies?
Well, so what made me decide to invest in the quail as a business is I love wildlife management. It's something I've wanted to do my whole life. I am, in the city limits. Chickens need more space. Quail require less space. There are setups to where you can eliminate a huge percentage of time and labor involved in operating a quail or poultry business by having a proper setup. And I mean, it's a passion of mine. I love doing it. I came across a video on YouTube of this guy talking about quail. Terry is who it was, and he made it seem possible. The first video I saw was the DIY incubator, and I saw that and I was like, I'm gonna do this, and this looks pretty awesome. And so I did some research. I wrote it all down, did numbers and everything like that, and I took it to there. I made it into something that has grown exponentially over the last 2 years.
Cool. Very good. Simon wants to know, should you turn eggs from point to base or side to side during incubation? I think that's supposed to be.
Yeah. I would just do side to side. If just tilting them. Yeah, I wouldn't flip them. I would. I mean, I'm sure in the wild, when hens are adjusting eggs, they could flip underneath them and be upside down, and it's just more distance that the actual air pocket or inside the egg has to travel and grow or whatever, all the biology inside of the egg happening. I mean, egg turners, if you look at all the commercial stuff, egg turners tilt. I would go by what everybody is mostly
Yep.
doing, which is just tilting.
Yep. Okay, La Rochelle Farm. Oh, this is to me. Wants to know if I'm going to try the horizontal nipples in any of my cages. I had given it a thought. I haven't done it yet, but I do have some new cages that I'm working on, and I might give them a shot. Just because the height of the cages, I really don't have enough room to get the nipple high enough for them. So, okay, Vam says, do you have a favorite way to cook quail and a preferred butcher method, and what age?
Oh man, that's an awesome question. Okay, so my favorite way to cook quail, honestly, is to spatchcock and smoke them. So my preferred method of butchering is I will do the cervical dislocation. So I just dislocate the head from the spinal cord, and then what I do is I'll make an incision where the head and the spinal cord used to meet, and it'll bleed them out, and then I scald them and pluck them. And then what I do then, a lot of times if I'm storing them, is I'll just I'll cut the vent off, angled towards the gland, which is on the kind of where the tailbone would be, where those two glands are above the vent. I'll cut that section out, and I grind it down a spoon like I've seen in one of Terry's videos, and use that as a lung scraper, essentially, because I went online and lung scrapers are like $65, and so I just got some silverware. Yeah, it was like a lung scraper, and it was like a circle, and it had teeth basically, and you just did it that way. But I just did practically a metal spork is what it looks like, and it works just fine, and it saved me $60. So
I use my thumbnail.
Yeah, see, I used to do that, but honestly, one afternoon the last batch of birds I processed, I did 69 back in summer, and it was a lot. Yeah, I was like, all right, well, it was in summer too, so I started at like 7 o'clock in the morning, and I stopped at about 12 because it was getting hot. I mean, granted, I was under oak trees and everything like that, and there was shade, but it was really hot, and so I did 69 that day by myself, and did it the way I explained, and had it done start to clean up in about 4 hours, or 6 hours. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, Henriette and Lauren, I just shut off the incubator. I know last week I told you guys I was going to move the incubator out, but I had birds in there that were due to hatch, so I didn't move it. So I just most of them hatched out, so I just shut it off. They'll be okay for a little bit. Let's see. Simon says, where'd it go? What do you use in America to clean your incubator? I use no rinse homebrew disinfectant. Seems to work out, but I only get a 70% hatch rate.
So if you're using homebrew disinfectants and stuff like that, I mean, it's really, I mean, that could work. I mean, a 70% hatch rate's great. I mean, honestly, anything over 50% is good. You gotta, take that. There's a lot of things to consider whenever it comes to poor hatchability, and sanitizing your incubator and hatcher is just one of them. It could be egg storage, it could be not turning the eggs, it could just be temperature, it could be humidity, it could be a lot of things. But that is a good question, and I mean it's just a lot deeper. Honestly, there's a lot more variables. But
Okay.
I use vinegar and water. I mean, honestly, or you could just go online and look at any commercial manufacturer incubator hatcher and see what they recommend, because that's people, I guess, who have done the research behind what to
Right.
use. So
I use a product called Odoban. You can pick it up at Home Depot. It's a concentrate, but it kills like 99.999% of everything. So, and it's pretty mild actually. I mean, by the time you reduce it down, it's a pretty mild stuff. Plus, it smells good.
there you go. That's always important, especially if the incubator's indoor.
Yeah. All right. Vam says, do you have a preferred quantity age of new breeders when introducing into an established covey?
So honestly, birds are sexually mature by about 6 weeks, I find, in my situation being indoor. And I mean, they're laying eggs before they're mating and everything like that here. Uh, I find that, 10 weeks, or honestly, I will separate birds at about 5 weeks old, because, next week they tend to get sexually mature around
Mhm.
6 weeks. And so if they start laying eggs in and they're all still grouped up, I don't want any males that are not breeder quality in there with them to breed a hen that is breeder quality, and you have watered down genetics in there, because you've got uh, all your males and all your females together. So I will separate them whenever they become feather sexable. I put all my hens and all my roosters together, and this way it helps me be able to really narrow down my genetics and pick and choose who's a breeder and who isn't a breeder. And that's, I mean, as early as 4 weeks old. But I'll introduce them to older breeders, or if I'm integrating a flock, I'll do it whenever they're able to lay eggs, whenever they're fully feathered and stuff. I have had no problems introducing younger birds to older birds.
Right.
Even in my aviary, I've released like 3.5 week old extra males that were feather sexable in with a group of older males, and I didn't have any issues. I didn't. They all had space and they all had places to hide, and
Sure.
you give them all that and you won't have hardly a fuss.
Okay. Animal says, how many eggs does your incubator hold?
I want to say it's about 1,200. So what I can do is so those GQF egg trays hold 124 eggs, and you can double stack them on each layer. So
Oh, wow.
there's 3 layers, and you could put 2 of those trays on each layer, plus 2 more on top of each. So that's 4 per layer. So you got 12 you got 12 egg trays in there that hold 124 eggs. So it's
Wow.
about, it's about 1,200. I have never incubated that many at one time yet, but I do plan on it, because I plan on getting into bob whites here in 2022, and I will have a separate hatcher. So each layer or each tier is a hatch where a hatch box can be, where it's not tilting, because
Right.
yeah, because well, so what's really cool with the Sportsman incubator, what's really worthy of mentioning with these, is that so when you buy these, they come with the plastic one that you fit on the bottom, and if you buy an extra hatch box, the metal one, you can actually slide that on to the egg turning rail, and then you just turn your egg turning rail off, so your automatic egg turner isn't turning while your eggs are
Okay.
hatching, and you can fit 2 hatch boxes actually inside of the Sportsman incubator, which isn't really mentioned anywhere, but
Right.
you can do it. And I found that out off of just sheer accident, and was like just fiddling around with it, and I was like, oh wow, I could do this. I could hatch 2 hatch boxes at the same time, because I would have celadons and I would have jumbos going at the same time.
Cool. Okay, Robert says, do you find it easier to move the quail or the eggs? I think so.
Do I find it easy? Oh, to sell, yeah. So I mean, honestly, I have a huge demand for both. I mean, I sell 109 dozen eggs every 2 weeks, and I sell about 200 birds a month. And so, producing, I mean, honestly, I make a good amount from just the eggs. I mean, equally, they're both really equal. I mean, really, it just depends on what your market is. I mean, if you're going after both, you'll get both. You know, if you're trying to push sales on something, if you're just trying to focus sales on one thing, that's why it's really important to kind of like have wide demographics whenever it comes to
Sure.
being vague kind of in your in in your well, not necessarily your advertisements, but just kind of having a wide variety. That's what I meant by being vague. Having options, like
Yep.
say you have eggs that are organic and eggs that are conventional feed. I feed conventional because it's the most cost effective thing to do here. And yeah, I feed conventional, so I don't have organic eggs to offer, but that would be a great asset to add. It's just an extra revenue stream of income that you could
Sure.
potentially be profiting off of. So it's a good question, but I mean both.
Okay. Maria says, on your outside aviary, what do you use underneath the grass clippings, dirt or sand?
Well, so that's under a bunch of oak trees, and so naturally there's just tons of oak leaves that just get in there because I mean it's chicken wire on half of the top and tarped on the other half of the
Mm-hmm.
roof. But it's all coastal grass that I like hay. I go to the feed store and I'll buy hay and I spread it in there. I mean, dirt was on there, but there's a lot of rock in my area. I'm in the hill country, like Central Texas is like really a lot of limestone up here. I'm on the Edwards Aquifer, and so there's tons of limestone and everything like that. It's just all rock, and so it's mostly just the soil that was underneath the oak tree, and just lots of coastal grass that has been composted down naturally and everything like that.
All right. Robert had a second half to his question. He wants to know how do you decide how many eggs to hatch?
Honestly, I hatch almost well, so it really depends on like if I'm really so I balance my work schedule and everything like that along with quail and stuff. So I find for me, one person operation, I find I could really manage about 300 chicks along with all my breeders and everything like that at the same time, as well as get back to people in an adequate amount of time and everything like that. But I mean, yeah. Sorry,
Yeah,
that's all I
no
got.
problem. Steven says, where does your best sales come from? Hatching eggs, eating eggs, live chicks, or older birds?
Man, that's a really good question. I mean, a lot of volume comes from eating eggs and uh, older birds, like just mature birds and chicks. I mean, honestly, all of those, uh, I mean, really make up an equal part of my business revenue. Uh, Really, it's important to diversify and have a bunch of things that you are offering because it can greatly, I mean, everything adds up, doing all the little things, grinding all of that out really will add up at the end of the month whenever you're doing books. It's
Yep.
incredible what what you can accomplish just by kind of working towards a little bit of everything a day. Now live birds and everything is a really big business here because of the native bobwhite quail population draws a lot of hunters, and so
Hmm.
people train their dogs and do stocked hunts with pin birds and everything like that. So I mean, there's tons of market around, and I would love to get into marketing in another time.
We'll get you back on here.
Yeah.
Okay, Trucker Planet says, do you keep the heater lamp on for 24 hours a day for newborn quail?
Yes, so my okay, so what I had done whenever I was doing a DIY setup, and I want to relate to the DIY setup more than I do the GQF digital, battery tier setup because it's not necessarily as easily available for everybody. But
Hmm.
what I had done is I had actually, so in Terry's design of his incubator, you make the temperature control switch basically, and with that, what I had done is I had spliced a heat lamp to it, so that way I had my sensor dangling at chick height, and I would have my heat lamp directly above that, and it would shut on and shut off just like the incubator lights would whenever it got too hot or too cold. And so yes, you want to leave them on, or you just want to have the right temperatures to, a better answer to your question, because it's not necessarily like you have to just like have light on them. It's not the light, it's the heat. So you got to monitor the heat.
Okay. All right, we're down to the bottom of the questions. We got one more from Veronica. She wants to know, would a grapefruit spoon work to clean out lungs when processing?
Honestly, yes, and I know exactly what you're talking about because my godmother just gave me one of these. Yeah, and it's like a silver spoon, and it's like as big as my pinky, but it's got serrated edges, like almost like an arrowhead. And
cool.
yeah, and honestly, that would work. It really would work. Give it a whirl. I find that like a regular spoon is good because it's wider, and what I like to do is I'll stick the spoon in and I'll give it a few twists, and what that normally does is it'll get the heart, the crop, and everything down out and in one go, and then I can come in and do little scrapes to get the lungs out, because the lungs are tricky. But I'm not spending $60 on a lung scraper.
Right. I hear you. Okay, we are down to the bottom of our questions. As soon as I get the winners from Lauren or Henriette, either one of you guys want to pick a couple winners, and we will go ahead and announce them real quick. Okay, we did have another question pop up from Levi. Said had to jump off for a minute. Do you use Corid as a preventative? Apple cider vinegar? Any of that?
I mean, I don't use Corid. I'll use apple cider vinegar. I do use supplements whenever it comes to like water intake and everything like that. Duravet sells products that are for vitamins and minerals and a layer boost and a probiotic, I want to say. And so you can use all that. You can use apple cider vinegar. It does work good as a preventative. Yeah.
Okay.
And it just cleans out everything. But cleaning your water troughs is always the best thing. I mean, it's nasty. It can be nasty, and it can be a lot of work and messy. But you know what? Those are living beings that are relying on you. So you got to get dirty sometimes.
Exactly. Okay, Trucker Planet says, how often? Oh, hold on, I lost my. How often do you add a new bloodline to your breeders, and how do you do it?
So whenever I add a new bloodline to my breeders, really very important selecting. I mean, I talked about earlier in those slides that you really want to talk to who you're getting who you're gonna get your eggs or live birds from, and make sure that they're uniform in size and everything like that. Now, I mean, I introduce them just like regular integrating. I mean, I just misting them with vinegar water solution is good. That's good. I mean, I'll pick my best breeders and I'll integrate 2 pins of each, and I'll put them in a new cage, and I mist them, and I usually have no problems with any fighting or anything like that, and they breed normally just fine. They'll establish a pecking order just like kind of everything, but nothing beyond the point of concern.
Okay, Doris wants to know, is this a weekly live? Yes, it is, Doris. We're here every Tuesday, 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, if you want to check in. I still need one more. It looks like Vam Smith is going to win our $50 gift certificate for hatching time.
Nice.
So Vams, if you can email me your shipping, or not shipping information, I just need your name and your email address, and I'll go ahead and forward that on over to hatching time, and they'll get you the gift certificate. And I need a second one. Here's a comment for you from Jasmine Bass. It says, Austin, you're a brilliant young man. Love seeing your enthusiasm. Great to watch. Yes, he is.
Thank
Very
you.
enthusiastic.
I really appreciate it. Was a
No,
little
go ahead.
nervous coming on. I was a little nervous coming on today. I mean, yeah, I was a little
Yep.
little anxious, but it was great being on here. I have a lot more to share. This is literally just scratching the surface. I could talk y'all's heads off seriously all night long, especially whenever it comes to marketing and numbers and everything like that, because I have a lot to share. I've turned this into a very successful business. I mean, I'm doing 109 dozen eggs every 2 weeks and 200 birds a month, netting about $40,000 projecting at that rate.
Cool.
And it's something I am extremely grateful for, and I've worked very hard for, and I couldn't be more thankful to be a part of such an awesome community, because I haven't seen this anywhere else in the world. The farming and ranching community is just a really good place to be. I mean, the 1% is feeding the rest of the 99% of the world whenever it comes
Yep.
to farming and ranching. So it's just a great thing to be a part of, and thank you all for
Exactly.
listening.
Exactly. Okay, it looks like Henriette picked Robert Halverson. You are going to get a Coturnix Corner Live coffee cup. If you can email me your, Henriette, if you can put my email up there, email me your shipping address, and I will go ahead and get that out. What's today? Tuesday? I'll get it out this week sometime. Email address is terry@coturnixcorner.com, so that's pretty simple to remember. Okay, it looks like we are down to the end of our questions. Let me just double check here. One last question. Brandon wants to know, what hatcher should I get?
I was gonna type something out. I was typing it out to him, but yeah, I mean, I suggest GQF products just because, I mean, that's what I've used. I mean, you can get a 1 tier and set it on a counter space or whatever it may be. You could build something with legs that you could stick just one layer on. It's
Yep.
really convenient. I mean, seriously, I spend literally probably maximum 3 to 4 hours a week on labor whenever it comes to taking care of my birds, as like feed, water, health inspection, and poop. That, I mean, literally having a setup is the most important thing that you can do if you're raising birds. Like I mean, if you're raising birds in general, because I mean, you want to go and be able to walk away for more than 24 hours sometimes and not have the worries that all hell is breaking loose. And so if you have a setup that allows you to do that, you're going to be a lot more efficient, because you can spend more time marketing and
Sure.
doing what I like to call sweat equity. If you don't have the money, you got to put in the sweat equity, which means you got to put in the hard work. I mean, that's the bottom line, is sweat equity.
Exactly. All right. He also wants to know what incubator to start out with.
I mean, Terry's design is great if you can find the supplies, if they're in stock, really. I mean, it's oftentimes really hard to find stuff in stock, so I mean, checking availability before buying parts of it is really important if you're needing it by a certain date. I mean, honestly, whenever I upgraded to the GQF Sportsman, boy, did it make my life easier. I mean, I built Terry's incubator with a box cut. I didn't have like the fancy tools or like any air tools or anything like that. I use a box cutter. Like
That's hard.
tell you what, that incubator had more caulking in it than I think anything I have ever seen in my life.
That's
I
funny.
had to seal that thing up big time. But I mean, honestly, if you're wanting to do it for the long run and invest your time in it and take it
Sure.
seriously, I mean, just bite the bullet, buy something that is, commercial grade. But I mean, if you're just getting into it and you just want to get a feel for it, I mean, build your own or find something maybe used. Facebook Marketplace is a great place to look for used equipment. I mean, seriously, y'all, join local poultry groups, farming and ranching groups, ask around. Lots of estate sales and everything like that. You would be very surprised what you could find on Facebook Marketplace.
Okay, great. All right. We are, wow, it's 20 to 9 already. We better get out of here. I do want to real quick, hold on, Stephen's got one more question, then we'll call it quits. Do you sell ready to cook packages? If so, how many in a package?
So here in the state of Texas, you have to have a grant, basically, and to sell meat, the DSHS, you have to have a grant, and an inspection earns you a grant, and an inspection is based off of your setup. So you have to have a facility that can pass inspection that earns you the grant to be able to sell meat. But you can sell live birds. You can sell live birds all day long, and that's something very important to consider whenever you're wanting to get into a business type model situation. If you're selling meat and eggs and everything like that, you've got to do the research for state and county ordinances in order to be code compliant with things like that, because you don't want the DSHS showing up at your house
shutting you down.
Yeah, or just questioning you, because that's what they do. They send a meat investigator out to your house, and they want to ask you questions of what you're doing. And if they give you a big booklet that is a guide, a consumer guide on how and what you need to pass inspection, and you can go online. This is very good information right here. You can go online and search things, or search places by grant type on the DSHS website, and that's how you can source or see who can sell what. Quail here in the state of Texas is considered a game bird, regardless of it being Coturnix or bobwhite. It's considered a game bird here. I'm working with an organization called FARFA. It stands for Farm and Ranch Freedom Alliance. It's a federal organization that fights for small farmers and ranchers' freedoms. They really help change all these laws that really keep the small farmers and ranchers out of, the big business that all these, larger companies are monopolizing. And the cottage home food laws is also another thing I would love to get into one day. I mean, and poultry rabbit exemptions. Here in the state of Texas, Coturnix quail do not fall under the poultry rabbit exemption, but the poultry rabbit exemption here is allows you to process under 1,000 birds and rabbits a year without any state or federal inspections. And so here, unfortunately, quail don't fall, or Coturnix quail don't fall under that. But in other states, it does, and it's important to check with that, because you do have a right to process meat for your friends and family if it is within your city or state laws, and it could make, or that can make a big difference in someone's life, like mine.
Okay. I do want to real quick give another shout out to our sponsors. Guys, if you want to help support the channel, visit either Southwest Game Birds or Hatching Times. Both are great companies. They do a lot for the channel, so I really appreciate them. I want to thank everyone for all the great questions. You guys did an awesome job tonight. Winners, don't forget to send me your information. Robert, I need your shipping information. Vams, I just got your email, so we're good there. Let's see. Thanks to our moderators, Lauren and Henriette. I appreciate all you guys do. It's great. As far as next week, guys, I had a guest that had to cancel next week, but he's coming on the following week. So I'm not sure 100% who's going to be coming on next week, Tuesday, but I will announce it over on Facebook as soon as I figure that out. Special thanks to you, Austin. Really appreciate you taking the time to put together the presentation and share your knowledge with everybody here on the channel.
My pleasure. I hope to answer everybody's questions, and I hope to be on again and talk everyone's
Sure.
head off about marketing or anything else. I
Absolutely.
mean, y'all ask away what y'all want to hear. Seriously, I'm an open book. I'm extremely transparent with everything. I will tell you exactly what I have learned from my experiences and everything like that. And yeah, don't be afraid to reach out and ask questions.
Absolutely. All right, guys. Thanks again. Have a wonderful night, and we'll see you guys back here next Tuesday.